In the heart of the kingdom of Fizzleton, where knights jousted and minstrels sang, there was a peculiar dragon named Bubbles. Unlike other dragons, Bubbles had a unique quirk. Instead of breathing fire, he blew bubbles. These weren't ordinary bubbles. They were enormous, shimmering orbs that floated gracefully before bursting into fits of giggles or sometimes turning into random objects. A bubble could turn into a chicken one moment and a chandelier the next. The townsfolk of Fizzleton were initially terrified of Bubbles. Dragons, after all, were supposed to be fearsome creatures, but it didn't take long for them to realize that Bubbles was more of a comedic spectacle than a threat. One day, as Princess Penelope was taking her afternoon stroll, a bubble floated towards her, and pop, it transformed into a giant jelly dessert, leaving the princess giggling and covered in wobbly goo. Sir Cedric, the bravest knight in Fizzleton, once tried to challenge Bubbles to a duel, but as he charged with his lance, a bubble enveloped him, turning his armor into a suit of rubber ducks. The entire town roared with laughter. Bubbles, realizing the joy he brought to the townsfolk, decided to make Fizzleton his home. Every morning, he'd soar over the town, releasing a cascade of bubbles, turning the sky into a shimmering spectacle. The children of Fizzleton adored Bubbles. They'd chase after the bubbles, eager to see what amusing transformations would occur. Once, a bubble turned a cart of apples into a pile of bouncing rubber balls, sending kids scrambling in delight. However, not everyone was pleased with Bubbles' bubbly antics. The town's baker, Mr. Crumble, was often at the receiving end of these transformations. His freshly baked pies would turn into frisbees, and his bread loaves into soft pillows. One day, a grand festival was announced in Fizzleton. The townsfolk were excited, and preparations were in full swing. Bubbles wanted to be part of the festivities and thought of a special performance for the big day. As the festival began, Bubbles took center stage. With a deep breath, he released the grandest bubble Fizzleton had ever seen. It floated above the crowd, reflecting the joyous faces of the townsfolk, before bursting into a shower of sparkling confetti. The festival was a roaring success, and Bubbles' performance became the talk of the town. Everywhere he went, children would run up to him, hoping for a bubble show. Bubbles, always eager to please, would oblige, filling the air with his magical bubbles. However, with fame came challenges. A mischievous group of teens, envious of Bubbles' popularity, devised a plan. They concocted a potion that, when consumed, would suppress Bubbles' bubble-blowing ability. One evening, as Bubbles rested by the river, the teens sneaked up and poured the potion into the water. Unaware, Bubbles took a sip and soon realized something was amiss. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't blow a single bubble. The news spread like wildfire. The children were heartbroken, and the townsfolk worried. They loved their bubbly dragon and couldn't imagine Fizzleton without his antics. Determined to help, Princess Penelope summoned the kingdom's best alchemists. After days of research, they discovered an antidote. It required a rare flower that bloomed only under the moonlight atop Mount Glimmer Peak. Without hesitation, a brave group set out on a quest to retrieve the flower. Facing numerous challenges, they finally reached the peak and plucked the flower. Racing back to Fizzleton, they administered the antidote to Bubbles. As dawn broke, Bubbles took a deep breath, and to everyone's joy released a flurry of the most beautiful bubbles they had ever seen. The mischievous teens, realizing their mistake, apologized and were forgiven. Fizzleton once again echoed with laughter and joy, all thanks to their beloved dragon. With his bubble-blowing ability restored, Bubbles became more than just Fizzleton's entertainer. He became its guardian. Whenever there was trouble, be it a fire or a cat stuck in a tree, Bubbles was there, using his bubbles in creative ways to save the day. The townsfolk, in gratitude, built a magnificent tower for Bubbles, right in the center of Fizzleton. From there, he could watch over the entire kingdom and be at the heart of all festivities. As years passed, tales of Bubbles' adventures spread far and wide. Travelers from distant lands visited Fizzleton, eager to witness the legendary dragon and his bubbles. Bubbles, always the gracious host, would put on spectacular shows, leaving visitors in awe. One day, a young dragon named Sparkle arrived in Fizzleton. She had heard tales of Bubbles and wanted to learn the art of bubble blowing. Bubbles, seeing a bit of his younger self in Sparkle, took her under his wing. Together, they soared over Fizzleton, filling the skies with bubbles of all shapes and sizes. From simple orbs to intricate patterns, the duo became an unstoppable team. ensuring that the legacy of bubble-blowing dragons would continue for generations. As the sun set on another day in Fizzleton, the townsfolk gathered around the tower looking up at Bubbles and Sparkle, their hearts filled with gratitude and love. The kingdom had found its heroes, and the legacy of laughter and joy would forever echo through its streets.